Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we'll be setting up our ranches, surrounded by beautiful mountains and water. But these aren't just any ranches, because we'll be enclosing dinosaurs in them. We'll be putting herbivores, carnivores, and unique dinosaurs in our ranch, separated by barriers of course. We'll also be researching these dinosaurs and using them to fulfill contracts. Tiny Epic Dinosaurs is a game of dinosaur ranching for 2 to 4 players, plays in 45 to 60 minutes, and published by Gamelyn Games. It's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and then I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are not final, they're prototype components, and you're going to want to check the Kickstarter page in the link in the description of this video to see all the final art and components. Tiny Epic Dinosaurs is a game of dinosaur ranching for 2 to 4 players where each player is going to be building up their own ranch. Over the course of the game, you'll be placing dinosaurs in your ranch like the Stegosaurus, Allosaurus, Brachiosaurus, and the Velociraptor, and sometimes even unique dinosaurs like the Pterodactyl. However, if you're unable to fully enclose a dinosaur, it escapes, sometimes removing barriers or other dinosaurs depending on the type it is that you've lost. And you'll also be spending resources like meat and leaves to feed all your dinosaurs. And if you can't feed them, those not fed will also escape, sometimes knocking down barriers and other times eating other dinosaurs depending on which type has escaped. Dinosaurs in the same enclosure will also breed, which will give you more dinosaurs. And you'll also be filling contracts for certain types of dinosaurs to give you points at the end of the game. You'll also be doing research, which will give you special abilities and points, and sometimes bring in those unique dinosaurs and give you points if they were there at the end of the game. And all the actions in the game are facilitated by a worker placement mechanism where you'll be placing workers to do all sorts of different things. At the beginning of the game, each player gets 2 ranches. They'll select one of them, and the other one will be their player board where they'll manage their resources and such. Now the resources in this game are meat, leaves, and supplies, and certain players, depending on player order, will start with a certain amount of those. Now the game's played over 6 rounds, and each round has 7 phases. The first one, you'll be collecting resources. Now everywhere on your ranch that you can see, meaning there's not dinosaurs on there, you'll collect those resources. So for example, at the beginning of the game, in the first round, you'll be collecting 5 leaves, 3 meat, and 1 of the supplies. Now you'll be tracking the rounds on this board as well as going through the phases, and most of the phases actually are done simultaneously, like collecting those resources. Everyone sort of does that at the same time. Now the next phase, assigning ranchers, is the one phase really where the main actions of the game is taken, and those are done in player order. Each player is given 4 ranchers at the beginning of the game, 3 normal ones and 1 lead one. And players in turn order will be going around clockwise and placing ranchers out into these different spots to take different actions in the worker placement. Now when placing a rancher, you can place any of your ranchers in an empty spot like this and you take the action. In this case, we're in the free range dinos area, and here you can get a Stegosaurus, for example. Now you'd actually roll this Wrangler die because you're out there in the free dino range trying to wrangle the dinosaurs, and depending on what this die does, something will happen. For example, if you roll this, you're injured, and essentially you'll immediately send this rancher to the medical leave, and you won't get the dinosaur, and it will open up this spot for other players. Now that leave is here on that main board, and you'll get it back at the end of the round. Now instead, if you rolled the net, you simply will collect that dinosaur, and if you roll an egg, you'll get an additional dinosaur, so 2 of those. Now when you get those dinosaurs, they go into your holding area, and you'll be placing those into your ranch in a future phase this round. And that would simply be your turn to be the next player's turn. Now let's say somebody else wants to take this action. They can go there, but they have to pay more ranchers. For example, they could pay 2 ranchers like this. However, that big rancher we talked about is worth 2. So they could do just this one and pay that, and now they've paid 2. And somebody else that hasn't gone there could actually go there as well, but they'd have to pay 3, for example. And the different spots here essentially get you those different types of dinosaurs. That's how the ranchers are placed and in turn order. And so let's just go over all the other actions that you can take. Now these spots here in the dino market allow you to spend resources like leaves, meat, or supplies to get different dinosaurs like the Stegosaurus, the Brachiosaurus, this or this, or take any one dinosaur. Again, always going to your holding area. Now the contracts here, we sort of talked about at the beginning of this video, because when you take these actions, you can fulfill a contract, like turning in 3 Stegosauruses, as I showed you earlier, and that will be worth 7 points at the end. These don't get refilled either if you're able to do that until the end of the round. Now at the beginning of the game, each player also gets a private contract that only they get to see. And when taking that contract action, in addition to fulfilling the public contract, if they can also fulfill this one and flip this over and get the points. And if they do that, they're also able to then get another face down private contract. So everyone will always have one private one as well, and you're doing that at the same time that you do a public one. So for example, if we had these dinosaurs here, we could essentially trade them in, putting them back into the supply and being able to flip this face up like this, and this will give us that many points at the end of the game. Now in this barriers section, you can go here to get barriers, and these are going to allow you to create enclosures for different dinosaur types, and we'll show you what the ramifications of setting up different enclosures are in just a little bit more detail. Now this allows you to get a supply, which again is one of the resources that you can use to spend to do things, and this allows you to spend a supply to get 2 barriers. This one allows you to take the first player marker and move a barrier, because usually when you place a barrier in your enclosure, to create a enclosure, you can't move it, but this allows you to do that. This one, spending 2 supplies and getting 3 barriers. Now when you get these barriers, they go into your holding area just like as if you were to get a dinosaur, because you'll be placing this in a later phase this round. Now when you go here, you can spend a supply. You can actually at this point move a dinosaur from your holding area instantly to any place on in your ranch, and also move a barrier, which again usually is not allowed unless you go to one of these spots. Now here you can do research. You can go here and spend a leaf and a meat and get one of these research cards, or go here, spend 2 supplies to get one. Now, and there's actually one more we'll show you in just a moment, but with the research cards, when you take one, you can either take one of these ones face up and place it in front of you, or you can take the top 3 off the deck, choose one, and the ones you don't choose come face up, so you're giving those open options to other players that might take this action a little bit later. Now these will have a certain amount of points, sometimes variable depending on the end game. Like at the end of the game, you gain 4 points if you have the most total resources. So some things will depend on end game things, and other things sometimes will get you some unique dinosaurs, like the pterodactyl. They'll actually have their own little sort of meeple there, and they'll do different things. Like for example, this can share space with any other dinosaur, so sometimes they have special abilities, and they'll get you some points if you have this at the end of the game. And so I'm going to put this off to the side. We'll talk about placing this a little bit later, because again, that will just go into your holding pen at this point. Over on this last board, again, these boards also scale for player count depending on what side you're using, but this one allows you to spend any dinosaur, and you can take one of those research cards. And when you spend one of these, it can either come from your holding area or from your actual ranch. And once everyone's assigned all their ranchers, everyone would just retrieve them, take them back, and then everyone would simultaneously arrange their own ranch. Now when arranging your ranch, you're going to be taking everything from your holding area and placing them into your ranch. Now I probably wouldn't have all of this in the first round for sure, but I'm going to just give you some examples of how we would make things. So let's say I placed it like this. Now this barrier here is actually an enclosure. It's all by itself. Now enclosures are made by either just this printed here or the barriers that you have here, and mountains and water also act as sort of a barrier. So this mountain is acting as a barrier, and these barriers are here. So this is one large enclosure of 3, and you can only have 1 dinosaur in each enclosure by default. And the unique dinosaurs, one thing that's different from them and the others is that they actually don't have to be in an enclosure like the other ones, because these ones, if they're not in an enclosure, they'll escape. And that's really important and bad, because if it's one of the herbivores, the Stegosaurus or the Brachiosaurus, if they escape, they'll actually take out one of the barriers that's there. You get to say which one leaves, but it's basically gone. They break through a barrier. So like if this was it, it would have escaped because they're not in an enclosure, but they are. But if they're not enclosed, the herbivores would take out any one barrier of your choice. If it happens to be of a carnivore like the Velociraptor or the Allosaurus, and they escape, not only are they gone, but they actually take out one of your other dinosaurs as they're escaping, because they essentially eat them. And when those bad things happen, if more than one of those types escape, you'll only lose like 1 barrier, even if multiple herbivores escape, and you'll only lose 1 additional dinosaur if more than one carnivore escapes. Also keep in mind that the unique dinosaurs have special abilities, like this one can be placed with another dinosaur if you want to. And during this arrange phase, you could rearrange one of the placed barriers, because normally you can't rearrange them once they're placed there, unless something like this tells you to, with some of those other actions we told you about. Then you go to the feeding phase. Now, each of these dinosaurs needs a certain amount of food. Like the Stegosaurus needs 1 leaf, the Brachiosaurus needs 2 leaf, Velociraptor needs 1 meat, and the Allosaurus needs 2 meat per dinosaur. So each of these need 1, so we'll spend 2 leaves for this. And the Velociraptor needs 1 meat, so this will go down like this. Now, if you cannot feed them, now you must feed them, but if you can't, because anytime you go below 1, these cubes kind of come off your board, and if you can't feed them, they will escape, and the same things happen, losing barriers and or dinosaurs, depending on which type of dinosaur escapes. Then you're going to go on to the breeding phase, which is also done simultaneously. Now, in any one enclosure, I believe I mentioned you can only have the same type of dinosaurs there, but if you have, for each set of 2 that you have in that enclosure, they will breed another one. And you can place it in the same enclosure if there's room, but you don't necessarily have to put it in the same enclosure. And if for some reason you had no room to place this new dinosaur, it would escape using the normal rules. Then you go to the refresh cards phase, sort of at the end of the round. You would bring the contract cards up to the number of players +1, so they just refresh there at the end of the round. You'd also discard any face-up research cards off to the side face down, and you'd place 2 new ones up there for the next round. Then you simply go to the next round. Now when you get to the 4th round, everyone will gain 1 more, as an intern, 1 more rancher of their types. It gives them more actions to take later in the game. At the end of the 6th round, it's the end of the game. You go to final scoring. And final scoring is pretty easy. You're going to add up all the numbers of the contracts that you fulfilled. You're going to get a certain amount of points for each of these dinosaurs. Like these are 2 points each. That's a total of 6. 3 points for that one. And this one depends on the unique dinosaurs. Each are different depending on the card. That's 3. And you might have some other research cards that will score. Like this one, you could have discarded that card to feed all your dinosaurs. Or if it's still here at the end of the game, it's worth 3 points. Whoever has the most points is the winner. Now there's plenty of these research cards that are unique dinosaurs. I'm just showing you a few of them here to just give you a little flavor of what they do. For example, this one is your dinosaurs cannot be eaten by escaping carnivores. So when a carnivore escapes, it won't eat any of the dinosaurs if this one is in your ranch. This one here is open spaces orthogonally adjacent to this dinosaur produces double the amount of resources. That's pretty cool. This one will give you 1 point for each dinosaur orthogonally adjacent to this space that dinosaur is in. This one is the barriers can't be destroyed when herbivores escape. This one gets placed into the water, and then during the collection, the resources phase, when you gain resources, you get 1 additional resource of your choice. And then this one says all 4 sides that sort of barrier this dinosaur counts as barriers for creating enclosures. And it's always considered being enclosed. So those are sort of the different things that some of these the unique dinosaurs do. And here's some more of some of those different science cards that are not the unique dinosaurs. Like this one at the end of the game, you'll gain 1 for every 2 dinosaurs in your ranch. This one allows you to rearrange your barriers during the arrange phase. So usually you can't move those, but this allows you to do that. This one allows you to keep 2 dinosaurs of the same type in your starting enclosure space. This one allows you to pay 1 to place an already placed regular rancher a second time, essentially giving you another action. This one will give you 4 points if you have the most carnivores in your ranch at the end of the game. This one was basically for the first player token. If you have it, you'll get an additional 2 resources of your choice. So those are the different things that they do. And again, they give you points at the end of the game as well. Well, there you have tiny epic dinosaurs, and as I showed in the overview, and just like their other tiny epic games, it packs a punch of deep gameplay and feels much bigger than a game that can fit in a box that small. It brings tension rushing to the worker placement spots you want, while giving you your own ranch puzzle to work on and closing and breeding the dinosaurs. Now, if you'd like to see the final art, components, and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video, and it will take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure the fine folks at Gamelyn Games would love your support.